아리랑 아라리요 아리랑 고개로 넘어간다 힘껏 달려 멈추지 마라 세상 끝까지 가자 아리랑 아리랑 아라리요
In our headlines on this Monday, March 30th, here in South Korea, concerns are mounting about a potential U.S. ground invasion into Iran, to which Tehran has vowed to respond with fire, while Pakistan speaks of potential dialogue between the U.S. and Iran in the coming days. Meanwhile, the average price of gasoline nationwide rises to over 1,873 won on this Monday, while the price at the pump here in Seoul hits well over 1,900 won. And on the K-pop front, boy band BTS lands the Billboard 200 chart for its 7th time with its comeback album Arirang, which also topped the UK's official charts this past weekend. We start with the latest on the conflict in the Middle East. U.S. President Donald Trump claims communication with Iran continues, even amid mounting speculation about American boots on the ground, to which Tehran has threatened to set on fire. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young has the latest.
US President Donald Trump says negotiations with Iran are going extremely well, saying a deal could be reached pretty soon, while also claiming the US could take Iranian oil and Hog Island. Speaking to the press on Air Force One on Sunday local time, Trump said the United States is holding both direct and indirect negotiations with Iran.
I would only say that we're doing extremely well in that negotiation, but you never know with Iran because we negotiate with them and then we always have to blow them up, whether it's the B-2 bombers or just terminating, as an example, the Iran nuclear deal done by Barack Hussein Obama, probably the worst deal we've ever done as a country, one of the dumbest deals we've ever done.
He also said Iran has agreed to allow 20 large oil tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz starting from Monday morning, in a possible sign of easing tensions. At the same time, in an interview with the Financial Times on Sunday, Trump said he prefers to take the oil and that the US could easily take Hog Island, a major Iranian oil export hub. He compared the potential move to Washington's previous operation on Venezuela, intended to indefinitely control its oil industry after capturing the country's leader Nicolas Maduro in January. The Washington Post on Saturday reported the Pentagon is preparing for several weeks of limited ground operations. These could include targeted raids on Hog Island and coastal areas near the Strait of Hormuz. The Wall Street Journal reported earlier that the US was considering deploying up to 10,000 additional ground troops to the Middle East. The White House has stressed that no final decision has been made. Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said the Pentagon is preparing options to give the president maximal flexibility. Iran has issued strong warnings in response. Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf said Sunday that any US ground invasion would be met with severe retaliation. At the same time, diplomatic efforts are underway. Pakistan says it will soon host talks between the United States and Iran aimed at ending the fighting, with Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar announcing the plan after a four-nation meeting with Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Egypt. Dar said both Washington and Tehran have expressed trust in Pakistan and that meaningful negotiations could take place within days. No official confirmation has come from either side. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Well, despite Pakistan's optimism about possible dialogue between the US and Iran in the near future, American soldiers appear to be expanding their presence in the Middle East. Our Ian Jin explains.
The number of American troops in the Middle East has now surpassed 50,000, which is roughly 10,000 more than usual, as American reinforcements continue to arrive. According to the New York Times, a U.S. military official said the arrival of 2,500 Marines and another 2,500 sailors brings the number of American troops to over 50,000, a figure that includes the roughly 40,000 scattered around at bases and on ships at any time in the region. It also includes the latest USS Tripoli that arrived on Saturday with 3,500 Marines on board. The number does not include the 4,500 aboard the aircraft carrier USS Gerald Ford as it withdrew from the region on March 23rd. According to Iranian state media, Iran's parliamentary speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf said on Sunday that Iranian forces were waiting for American soldiers, ready to, quote, rain fire on any U.S. troops attempting to enter their territory, but accused Washington of secretly planning an assault while seeking negotiations to end the war. Last week, the Pentagon also ordered about 2,000 soldiers from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East to give President Donald Trump additional military options. But military experts caution that even the more than 50,000 troops is not enough for any kind of major land operation. According to the New York Times, expert analysis says taking, let alone holding, a country of Iran's size, complexity, and weaponry with 50,000 troops is not plausible. Experts, for reference, cite that Israel used more than 300,000 troops for its operation in the Gaza Strip that began in October 2023, which remains ongoing. And the U.S.-led coalition of Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003 was close to 250,000 at the beginning. 이은진, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the ripple effects of the unrest in the Middle East continue to be felt at filling stations across the country. In fact, prices at the pumps here in Seoul rose past 1,900 won today. Our economics correspondent Kim Jun-hong covers the escalating costs.
Seoul's gasoline prices have resumed their upward trend, hitting their highest level since mid-month. As of Monday, the average gasoline price nationwide rose 0.7% from the previous day to 1,878 won, or approximately $1.24 per liter. In Seoul, prices climbed to the 1,921 range, marking the highest level since March 11th. This upward trend appears to reflect the government's move to raise the price caps on petroleum products. The government introduced a price cap system on refinery supply prices starting March 13, with plans to adjust the ceiling every 2 weeks. In line with this, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources announced the first adjustment of price caps on Friday. With prices rising following the adjustment, analysts say the nationwide average gasoline price is likely to break the 2,001 mark in the near term.
Right now, some fuel bought before the adjustment is still in circulation, so the full effect hasn't shown up yet. Once those supplies run out, prices are likely to move higher.
Meanwhile, global oil prices also surged over the weekend as tensions in the Middle East intensified, adding to the upward pressure. Bloomberg reported Monday that in early Asian trading, Brent climbed 2.2% from the previous session to trade in the $115 per barrel range. U.S. West Texas Intermediate also rose, staying just above $100 per barrel. This follows an attack on Israel by the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen on Saturday, marking their first direct involvement since the conflict began. Fears are growing that tensions could spread to the Red Sea, a key route for over 10% of global oil shipments.
Looking at past oil shocks, if the Strait of Hormuz stays closed through late April, prices could hit around $160. If it lasts until June, they may climb above $180. And if Red Sea risks add further supply disruptions, that will only push prices higher.
With global oil prices expected to remain volatile, the upward pressure on domestic fuel costs is likely to persist, weighing further on consumers for the time being. Kim Jun-hong, Arirang News.
Also, on the local front, the local currency and the local bourse continue to surrender ground amid mounting anxiety over the prolonged aggression between the U.S. and Iran. Our Kim Do-yeon has the closing numbers and more.
South Korea's financial markets closed lower Monday, reeling 1 month into Operation Epic Fury in the Middle East. The benchmark KOSPI ended the session at 5,277.30, dropping nearly 3% from the previous trading day. The index has taken a severe hit since the conflict began. Just before the operation launched on February 27th, the KOSPI closed at 6,244.13. Monday's close represents a steep decline of roughly 15% over the past 4 weeks. Foreign investors have been the primary drivers of this downward trend, dumping domestic shares amid a rapid flight from risk assets. This flight to safety is also heavily impacting the South Korean currency. The won closed Monday at 1,515.71 against the US dollar. The exchange rate was already facing upward pressure earlier this year, closing at 1,485 won before the war started. However, the onset of the conflict acted as a major catalyst, rapidly pushing the rate past the psychological defense line of 1,500 won. Because crude oil is universally priced and traded in greenbacks, surging energy prices naturally drive up the global demand for the US dollar. This sustained currency depreciation comes as the newly nominated Bank of Korea Governor Shin Hyun-sung returned to Seoul earlier Monday, having been staying in Zurich, Switzerland. He faces immediate pressure to stabilize the financial markets. However, experts point out that the central bank's policy options may be limited as the currency's weakness is not solely driven by external geopolitical shocks.
Even before the Middle East situation exerted its influence, the exchange rate had already climbed to the high 1400s. That underlying rise is a reaction to domestic economic weakness and the persistent outflow of capital toward U.S. stock investments. The push past 1500 is linked to the Middle East war, but the initial climb was driven by domestic factors.
Investors are waiting to see if the incoming BOK chief will prioritize macro-prudential measures to manage capital outflows or adjust interest rates. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, across the border, North Korea reportedly conducted a test for an upgraded solid fuel engine that the regime claims can reach the U.S. mainland. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has overseen a ground test of a high-thrust solid fuel engine made with carbon fiber composite materials. The exact date of the test has not been unveiled, but according to the Korean Central News Agency on Sunday, the newly upgraded engine has a maximum thrust of 2,500 kilonewtons. The test was part of a 5-year National Defense Development Plan aimed at advancing strategic strike means, and Kim was quoted as saying that the regime's defense capabilities had entered a significant phase of change in building strategic forces. Pyongyang previously conducted a final ground jet test of a carbon fiber solid fuel engine in September last year, where the maximum thrust was known to be 1,971 kilonewtons. The latest test showed an increase of around 26%, enough to lift an object weighing about 255 tons into the air. An increase in an engine's maximum thrust usually means a longer range for intercontinental ballistic missiles. However, as North Korea is already believed to possess ICBMs capable of reaching the U.S. mainland, many experts say the regime's efforts to continuously boost engine output may be to develop multiple warhead ICBMs, which are more difficult to intercept. The new engine is likely to be mounted on the Hwasong-20, which North Korea has said it is developing. Experts say this could be a message to the U.S., showing that North Korea is different from Iran and can strike the U.S. mainland.
In terms of U.S.-North Korea talks, it suggests that North Korea, unlike Iran, can send multi-warhead ICBMs to the U.S. mainland, and may be hinting at a willingness to engage in future nuclear arms reduction talks.
Kim also inspected a test to assess the performance of new main battle tanks at a facility of the Academy of Defense Sciences and reviewed training exercises of Special Operations Forces under the Operations Bureau of the General Staff of the Korean People's Army. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
K-pop sensation BTS is topping music charts in the US and in the UK with its latest album, Arirang. Our culture correspondent Park Gun-woo covers its latest achievements.
For BTS's new album Arirang, the beginning is straight in at #1 on the Billboard 200 for the week of April 4th. The group now has its 7th #1 album, a feat that began with Love Yourself Tear in 2018, the first K-pop album to top the chart. The latest album earned 641,000 units, with the chart based on a combination of physical sales, digital downloads, and streaming. It's the biggest week for a group album since December 2014, when the chart began using units. Over the weekend, BTS also topped the UK's official albums chart with Arirang at #1, the third time in the group's career. They first made history in 2019 with Map of the Soul Persona, becoming the first K-pop act to top the chart. The lead track Swim ranked second on the official singles chart, leaving the group with a chance to climb to #1. This already marks a new record, surpassing the group's previous peak of third place with Butter and Dynamite, respectively. With strong momentum, BTS is now aiming for the top of the Billboard Hot 100 with Swim, with the latest chart set to be released on Tuesday.
Given their global impact, Swim is widely expected to top the charts, with several tracks likely to enter the upper ranks of the Hot 100. It's their comeback in nearly 4 years, and only a few artists can match BTS when it comes to the impact of a new release.
The critic added that the latest album features several tracks that could earn recognition from prestigious awards such as the Grammys, noting that a win is possible if the songs remain on the charts through autumn. 박건우, Arirang News.
And 7 out of 10 foreigners have a favorable view of Hallyu or the Korean wave. According to the 2026 Overseas Hallyu Survey released on this Monday by the Culture Ministry, around 70% of those surveyed shared positive sentiments about Korean cultural content. More than 27,000 people across 30 countries were surveyed. The Philippines, India and Indonesia ranked highest in overall favorability. K-content's popularity also rose sharply in Western countries, including the UK and Spain. When asked about what comes to mind about Korea, K-pop ranked first for the 9th year in a row, followed by Korean food and Korean dramas. In other news, President Lee Jae-myung has pledged to better protect the public from state violence. Speaking at a town hall meeting on Jeju Island earlier on this Monday, he said the government will abolish the statute of limitations for criminal and civil cases related to state violence, including the April 3rd massacre, to hold those responsible to account. The April 3rd massacre saw the deaths of thousands of Jeju residents between 1947 and 1954 amid a brutal government crackdown on protests against a separate general election in the south amid the Cold War era. Wando County is slated to host a global seaweed expo in 2028, and ahead of that event, the county will hold a preview expo in the month of May to better highlight the health benefits of eating seaweed. Our Kim So-young has more.
Wando County, recognized as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, is home to a wide variety of Korean seaweed. The Wando Seaweed Pre-expo will be held here in May. Residents recently gathered together to show their commitment to successfully hosting the expo and showcasing the full scope of the seaweed industry.
We, the 50,000 residents of Wando County, are united in our commitment to the successful hosting of the 2026 Pre-expo.
The Pre-expo will serve as a global wellness festival promoting the value of marine healing, biotechnology, and blue carbon.
The expo will be designed to deliver tangible benefits to those in the fisheries. We've invited 40 buyers to export consultations to help pave the way for our clean seafood to gain global recognition.
Various exhibitions, expert consultation meetings, and cultural events will be held near Wando Beach Park and the Wando Marine Healing Center.
Ahead of the 2028 main expo, this pre-expo will help show the world that seaweeds are not just food, but future assets.
The Wando Seaweeds Expo is expected to further solidify Wando County's status by presenting the future of the seaweed industry and boosting the local economy through tourism. Kim So-young, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Millions of Americans took to the streets on Saturday in so-called No Kings rallies. More than 3,200 anti-Trump demonstrations were held with protests in all 50 states. The protesters criticized Trump's deportation crackdowns, the war in Iran, and what they called a dangerous drift toward authoritarianism. In New York, tens of thousands packed more than 10 city blocks in Midtown Manhattan. In Dallas, clashes with counter-protesters led to arrests. In Los Angeles, federal authorities deployed tear gas after crowds surrounded a federal building. A poll by Reuters and Ipsos suggests Trump's approval rating has fallen to 36%, the lowest since Trump's return to the White House. A Manhattan federal court on Friday accepted Bank of America's agreement to pay $72.5 million to women who accused the bank of enabling Jeffrey Epstein's sexual abuse. Plaintiffs allege the bank ignored suspicious transactions tied to Epstein, choosing profit over victim protection. Bank of America denied wrongdoing but called the settlement the right path forward. Other banks made similar payments in 2023, with JP Morgan settling for $290 million and Deutsche Bank for $75 million. A hearing to consider final approval is scheduled for Thursday. Nepali police on Saturday arrested former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli over deaths that occurred in last September's protests. The police are investigating whether Nepal's former leader was negligent in failing to prevent the deaths of 76 people during the Gen Z-led anti-corruption protests that forced his resignation. Former Home Minister Ramesh Klekak was also arrested on the same grounds. Oli's supporters immediately took to the streets, clashing with police who used tear gas and batons to break up the crowds. The arrest came one day after rapper-turned-politician Balendra Shah was sworn in as Nepal's new prime minister following a landslide election victory. Thieves last week stole more than 400,000 KitKat chocolate bars after hijacking the truck transporting them from central Italy to Poland. Swiss food giant Nestle confirmed Saturday the vehicle and the 12 tons of chocolate bars remain unaccounted for. Nestle said, "We appreciate the criminals' exceptional taste, but each bar carries a traceable batch code, and anyone scanning a stolen bar will receive instructions to contact the company directly." Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
Mild weather has been continuing nationwide, bringing spring blossoms into full bloom, but rain is on the way at the start of the week. We're expecting some much-needed rain today and tomorrow. Rain will ease off by late tomorrow morning. However, the mountainous areas and the east coast of Gangwon-do province, along with the east coast of Gyeongsang-buk-do province, could see rain lasting into the afternoon. The amount of rain will generally range from 5 to 50 millimeters, with heavier showers along the southern coast and on Jeju Islands. Meanwhile, Jeju could see gusty winds, thunder, and lightning through tomorrow, so please take extra care. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 9 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon at 9 degrees, Jeju at 13 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 21 degrees, Chuncheon at 20 degrees, Jeju at 17 degrees. Most of the rain will clear by tomorrow morning, but the east coast of Gangwon-do province may see showers lingering into the afternoon. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session, during which we address the conflict in the Middle East.
Hello, Arirang. I am Kojo Choi, Ghana's ambassador to Korea. Happy 30th anniversary. All eyes are on you, all ears are on you. Fighting!
A country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and...
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
Traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view, as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
세상이 무서운가 눅눅하던 고요가 잠을 잃은 나의 밤을 채우면 뭉툭해져 섞인 나의 길을
Party held its first debate over the weekend. The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
reporting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of this latest UN summit.
It's a massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
Iran threatens to set American soldiers on fire amid widespread speculation of a potential U.S. ground invasion, while Pakistan hosts regional talks aimed at bringing Washington and Tehran face-to-face for peace negotiations. Do stay with us. Hope your work week is off to a good start. You're watching Press Perspective for this Monday, March 30th here in Seoul. I'm Min San-hee. The military confrontation against Iran led by the US and Israel has marked 1 month, and today we touch upon the ongoing conflict as well as its broader consequences and the chances of an end to the fighting in the near future. More on this, I have Professor Min Jong-hoon from the Korean National Diplomatic Academy here in the studio. Professor Min, it's been such a long time. Welcome back.
Yes, thanks so much for having me today.
Lovely. I also have freelance journalist Rafael Rashid with us here in the studio. Rafael, it's great to have you here.
Good to be back. Thank you.
Rafael, we start with you. So as I mentioned earlier, we are marking a month since the start of the military confrontation involving the US, Israel and Iran. Let's start with some of the more recent developments, perhaps on the battlefield and more.
Sure. Quite a lot is going on, so I'll try to keep it brief. But more than 3,500 US troops arrived in the Middle East over the weekend, including the USS Tripoli carrying around 2,500 Marines. This ship was originally based in Japan before being redeployed nearly, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Additionally, there'll be apparently some more forces en route from San Diego coming over. Trump reportedly said on Sunday that his preference would be to take the oil in Iran, saying US forces could seize Karg Island, which of course handles most of Iran's oil exports. Secretary of State Rubio also said last week, at the end of last week, he said the US can meet its objectives without any ground troops, though forces have been kind of pre-positioned to give Trump maximum optionality, as he said. Meanwhile, we're seeing Yemen's Houthi rebels have entered the conflict over the weekend, launching several missiles towards Israel. I think this marks a significant widening of this war, if you will. The group previously disrupted Red Sea shipping in support of Hamas, and their involvement now threatens the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which of course in this area is where Saudi Arabia has been using to effectively bypass the closed Strait of Hormuz at the moment. Meanwhile, the death toll, the human toll, has continued to increase. I think latest reports are hovering around 1,500 civilian fatalities in Iran, including hundreds of children. I believe 13 US service members have been killed. And there, of course, have been several deaths reported throughout the Middle East as well. And I believe the last that we've heard is that a UN peacekeeper in Lebanon was killed on Sunday. Trump has given Iran until, I believe it's the 6th of April, to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and announce a 10-day pause on strikes on Iranian energy infrastructures. He said that the US and Iran have been talking or meeting directly and indirectly. But overall, I think, of course, the broader campaign continues, and oil prices this morning hit $116 per barrel in the morning today.
Right, indeed. Professor Min, in response to the escalating violence in the Middle East, there are quite a number of pundits who claim that Mr. Trump's war of choice is becoming a war of necessity. How do you respond to this observation?
Personally, I don't agree with that argument. Specifically, I don't think that the Iran war was inevitable for U.S. I don't think so. First of all, it's not clear what backgrounds, considerations, and goals U.S. had before it decided to go to war. Some people may argue that Iran was an immediate, direct military threat to the United States, but I don't think that Iran imposed immediate, direct military threat to the U.S. For the United States, Iran's nuclear weapons could be considered as a military threat to the United States, but it was known that Iran did not have nuclear warheads, and it did not also have delivery means like ICBM to reach U.S. mainland from Iran. Instead, I think it was more persuasive to argue that Israel perceived Iran as immediate direct military threat, and it wanted to make a serious damage on Iran's military capabilities with the help of the United States. So Netanyahu's the persuasion and temptation to achieve regime change and finish the war in a short period of time, and possibly President Trump's personal calculation to become a great president who would resolve Iran's problems that the U.S. suffered from decades. Those kind of considerations made U.S. go to war. So, of course, at this point of time, it's not clear when the war will be over, but it seems to be very certain that it will be a big political issue in the United States, why and how U.S. decided to go to the war in the coming months and years.
Right. Beyond the U.S., Raphael, multilateral diplomacy is taking place. It took place in France last week under the framework of the G7 for a ministerial meeting to try to solve the conflict in the Middle East. What made headlines out of that particular gathering?
Yeah, I think the most striking headline, if you will, that came out of this was Rubio's timeline, speaking at the end of this gathering near Paris that I think spread over 2 days. He said that he expects the U.S. to finish its so-called operations in Iran in the next couple of weeks. He added that the objectives were being achieved ahead of schedule. Trump and his officials have constantly been saying that these operations or this war would last for between 4 and 7 weeks approximately. So now we're reaching the end of 4 weeks. So apparently Rubio's timetable or time frame is kind of fits these predictions, if you will. There were, I do think there still were some tensions. France's army chief had been effectively complaining that the US hadn't even announced or warned to allies before carrying out these strikes, saying that Washington's unpredictability was impacting European interests and security. On the diplomatic front, Rubio did say that there had been some exchanges of messages with Iran about willingness to talk, but he added, and I quote, "We're waiting for further clarification about who it is that we would be talking to, what we would be talking about, and when we'll be talking." He also referenced the 15-point plan that Trump had passed to Iran via Pakistan, and Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, said that he was hopeful that there would be some meetings very soon. The G7 countries did issue a statement, and they called for the absolute necessity to permanently restore safe and toll-free freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. France actually revealed its military chiefs had met with around, I think it was 35 counterparts, 35 countries, to discuss the future mission to guarantee freedom of navigation once the hostilities quiet down, essentially. And Also, Rubio did say that the UK were working to build a coalition, this coalition in particular, though he noted that it would be needed for the period after the war and, of course, not during it.
Right, and staying with G7 efforts to ease the violence in the Middle East, Professor Min, South Korea is reported reviewing its diplomatic schedule in response to France's invitation to the G7 Leaders Summit in June. Speaking as a scholar, what would be the implications of South Korea's presence at or absence from this particular gathering?
Well, as you may know, South Korea has been invited to the G7 Leaders Summit for years, probably 4 years in a row, I think. And it shows that South Korea is an important partner for the G7 countries based on South Korea's enhanced national capabilities. Most importantly, the G7 countries want to enhance its economic and technological cooperation with South Korea. South Korea has got the world-class manufacturing capabilities like semiconductors, large volume batteries, the bio-nuclear energy, shipbuilding, and defense industry. And the G7 countries expect South Korea to play a greater role in enhancing cooperation in the fields. Meanwhile, I also think that the G7 countries also want South Korea to contribute to securing the stability and prosperity of the global community, the security. It means that South Korea has been also considered as an important partner on security matters in the international community. And at this time, in terms of the ongoing Iran war, energy security is expected to be one of the main topics of the G7 leaders meeting this year. And I expect that South Korea will express its intention, what roles and contributions South Korea can do for energy security. So overall, I think South Korea's participation to the G7 Leaders Summit shows its enhanced international standing, and we can expect that South Korea will play a bigger role in the stability and the prosperity of the international community. So as the Korean national, it's a pretty the honor or the big pride that South Korea continues to be invited by the G7 Leaders Summit, because now I feel that South Korea is one of the advanced countries in the world.
Right, indeed, and that particular summit is expected to take place this June, of course. Raphael, you mentioned earlier the 15-point proposal by the U.S. to Iran to end the military confrontation between the two countries. Iran also handed to the U.S. reportedly a counter-proposal. Could you very briefly walk us through some of the demands made by these two countries to each other?
Sure. So the U.S. 15-point plan, which was transmitted via Pakistan, addresses Iran's nuclear program, missiles, and of course the Strait of Hormuz. The core demands include dismantling 3 key nuclear facilities, stopping uranium enrichment entirely, committing never to pursue nuclear weapons, and transferring enriched materials to the International Atomic Energy Agency. The plan also asks Iran to abandon its proxy network groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis, limit its missile program to self-defense use only, and ensure that the Strait of Hormuz remains open for business. In exchange, the US offers to lift nuclear-related sanctions, assist Iran's civilian nuclear program, including electricity generation, and remove the snapback mechanism that automatically reimposes sanctions for non-compliance. Of course, as you just mentioned, Iran has essentially rejected this and put forward its own 5 conditions of its own. They've said that they want a complete halt to US and Israeli, and I quote, aggression and assassinations with concrete mechanisms to ensure this war doesn't resume. They have also required for a payment of war damages and reparations. I think that's a very important point as well. They've asked for an end to attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon and pro-Iranian militias in Iraq. And crucially, they've asked for international recognition and guarantees for Iran's sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's foreign minister said on state television, at present our policy is the continuation of resistance. We do not intend to negotiate. He insisted Iran is only sending messages through mediators, which does not mean negotiating per se. And also there was an Iranian official told Press TV that the end of the war will occur when Iran decides it should end and not when Trump envisions its conclusion. So of course a lot is going on, and as I mentioned, Pakistan is the main mediator, but also we have countries like Egypt and Turkey that are also involved.
Right, indeed. Professor Min, as Raphael just mentioned, Iran, it's called for sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. What are the prospects of this particular demand?
Basically, I don't think that it's appropriate for Iran to claim sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Again, in other words, Iran's claim should not be accepted by the international community for any reason. So unlike Panama or Suez Canal, where the cargo ships use its facilities and services, the Strait of Hormuz is just open water or ocean, and by international law, navigating or using the open water or the ocean should be free. So personally, what Iran is trying to do over the Strait of Hormuz reminds me of the old Korean story of Bonghi Kim Sondal. You may be familiar with that kind of story. And who is a history figure in Korean old tradition story. And it was known that he sold the water of Daedonggang River with a tremendous amount of money. And at the time, of course, the water of the Daedonggang River was absolutely free and open for all people. So it is like the historical well-known fraud or scam story in South Korea. So anyway, Iran's claim over the Strait of Hormuz will not be accepted by the international community. You know, if the international community accepts Iran's claim, but probably in terms of the serious considerations that Iran have got the serious economic damage in terms of the unexpected war or the Israel's and the U.S. the unilateral attacks. Even if the international community accepts such Iran's claims, then we may see similar claims around the world that several countries want to impose the mandatory fares for open water nearby their territories. For example, suppose the situation where Philippines or China will claim their sovereignty over the South China Sea, where lots of the cargo ships path the routes to reach the East Asia and the Pacific Ocean the regions. And if they ask for the mandatory fares, you know, it would be very chaotic, and it would be a shock for the international community. So it should not be accepted by any means, and the means and the regions. So it is truly sorry for what Iran experienced and lost through the war, but it does not mean that Iran has a right to impose mandatory fares over the open water. It should not be accepted.
Right, the Strait of Hormuz. Raphael, moving forward, there are pundits who say that the military operation against Iran is, and I'm quoting, draining U.S. arsenal that keeps North Korea in check. Do tell us a bit more about this particular observation and your takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, during the intense June 2025 Iran-Israel conflict, U.S. forces fired, I believe, more than 150 THAAD interceptors, roughly a quarter of its total global inventory. The U.S. produces 600 to 650 Patriot PAC-3 missiles annually, but in just the past few weeks of the current campaign, it is estimated that they've fired around 1,000 Patriot missiles that have been used, and these systems cost a lot of money, around $6 million each, $1 million, of course, and they take, over a year to replenish. So the concern here in Seoul is that THAAD and Patriot systems have been withdrawn from South Korea and sent to the Middle East. Of course, over the past few weeks, we did see a lot of reports of these large US cargo aircraft kind of flying from here to the Middle East, coming and going several times, and it seems to have intensified. It's of course, and it's been also reported that, of course, this was all going to Iran, essentially. President Lee Jae-myung did address this several weeks ago, saying essentially that there's nothing that South Korea can do about this, but did maintain that South Korea's defense spending and military capabilities, which ranks around 5th globally, mean that even if they do withdraw these assets from the peninsula, that this wouldn't have a significant impact on deterrence when it comes to North Korea. And he also emphasized the need to build self-reliant defense capabilities for situations when external support essentially disappears. Personally, I think the timing, of course, it is quite notable here. North Korea does command an estimate, some people say around 50 nuclear warheads, thousands of missiles pointed towards Seoul within minutes of reach. Pyongyang is, of course, also under severe economic pressure, and I think the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, as we've mentioned, has pushed the price of oil barrel over $100, making North Korea's black market fuel imports even more expensive. So I think historically, when we see fuel shortages and economic pain inside North Korea, then we tend to see that the regime might escalate some kind of provocation or try to force Washington or Seoul, trying to do some kind of bargaining here. So I think we'll probably be hearing a bit from North Korea over the next few weeks.
Right, and keeping in mind what Raphael has just said, Professor, should South Korea be worried about the U.S. mission in the Middle East and its potential implications on security and stability here on the Korean Peninsula?
Well, basically, I don't think that the ongoing Iran war would make a negative impact on the joint defense posture or the peninsula-based deterrence against North Korea. So personally, I don't have any serious concerns about maintaining the airtight security on the Korean peninsula. Of course, you may remember that my government, Lee Jae-myung government, expressed that South Korea opposed to the deployment of the Korea-based equipment like THAAD and the Patriot defense units to the Middle East, but it also respected what the ally, United States, wanted. So U.S. has got urgent need to secure more the military capabilities to go through the war in Iran. So I think that although some THAAD and Patriot defense units were sent to the Middle East, USFK still possesses has enough military capabilities to deter North Korea. And the South Korean military has got overwhelming the conventional capabilities against North Korea. So there should be no serious concerns about the defense posture on the Korean Peninsula. And I also think that North Korea would be very cautious in terms of the maintaining its posture against South Korea and the USFK in the times of the crisis, because the North Korea, there is some kind of the voice that North Korea would conduct some military provocations by taking advantage of the ongoing Iran war, possibly the power vacuum around the Korean Peninsula. But North Korea is fully aware of the imbalance, the military capabilities between South Korea and the U.S. and North Korea. So North Korea would not make the reckless the military operations, because if it makes the serious mistakes in terms of the military engagement, then North Korea has a severe repercussion and a serious impact about it.
Right. On that note of reassurance, we shall end today's talk. Professor Min, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Raphael, thank you very much for your thoughts.
Thank you.
On that note, we end Monday's edition of Press Perspective. As always, thank you for watching.
you